motion to leave executive session where we did say the Pledge of Allegiance to move into the public. Can I have a motion for that?
Motion.
Second,
Okay, I think it was Tim and
Janice.
Janice. Okay. Okay. Well, that's a little bit of a bumpy start. Welcome to a meeting of the Board of Education of Somerset Hills. Please be advised that this and all meetings of the board are open to the public and media, consistent with the Open Public Meetings Act, and that advance notice required therein has been provided. This is a meeting of the Board of Education of Somerset Hills at which formal action may be taken. The public will have an opportunity to be heard. Due to the public health emergency in the state of New Jersey as declared in Executive Order 103, the board will be suspending its normal meeting procedures this evening and conducting a virtual meeting. Directions for accessing the virtual public meeting were posted on the district website www.shsd.org. Okay, we did the roll call. Do we need to redo the roll call?
Why don't I do it again, because I'm not sure if that was recorded.
Okay.
All right, so Mr. Baker,
Here.
Ms. Cooper,
Here.
Mrs. Frenda,
Here.
Mr. McDonald,
Here.
Ms. Nathans,
Here.
Mrs. Santoro,
Here.
Mrs. Tober,
Here.
Ms. Virtue,
Here.
Mrs. Rye,
Here.
Mrs. Lees.
Here.
Okay, and I do not have any correspondence.
Okay, then we can move directly into the report of the superintendent.
We actually have to do that resolution to suspend the policy for public meetings.
Oh, we have to do that every time?
Yes, because we don't have a policy yet.
Okay, can I have a resolution, a motion to suspend the policy for public meetings?
Motion to suspend the policy for public meetings.
Thank you, Heather. And second?
I second it, Janice.
Okay, thank you.
And roll call. Mr. Baker,
Yes.
Ms. Cooper,
Yes.
Mrs. Frenda,
Yes.
Mr. McDonald,
Yes.
Ms. Nathans,
Yes.
Mrs. Santoro,
Yes.
Mrs. Tober,
Yes.
Ms. Virtue,
Yes.
Mrs. Rye,
Yes.
Mrs. Lees.
Yes. Okay. Now we can move into the report of the superintendent.
Sounds good. Good evening, everybody. Our last Board of Education meeting was held on April 29th, less than 2 short weeks ago. At that point, we were still waiting for Governor Murphy's decision regarding reopening. I mentioned that we were soliciting input from parents and seniors for events like graduation and planning for end-of-year housekeeping like collecting textbooks and distributing caps and gowns in a world of social distancing. I talked about the fact that while we hoped for the best, we were spending more time planning for the worst. From an information standpoint, even though only 2 weeks have gone by, the world is quite different right now. On Monday, May 4th, Governor Murphy announced that schools would be closed through the end of the school year. On Thursday, May 7th, Governor Murphy and Superintendent of the State Police, Colonel Patrick Callahan, announced an administrative order clarifying that recreational and entertainment activities prohibited under Executive Order Number 107 are also prohibited within the facilities of public elementary and secondary schools that remain closed to students. On Friday, May 8th, the New Jersey DOE published a letter stating, quote, "Only virtual graduation ceremonies can be planned at this time," end quote. And on Saturday, May 9th, Superintendent of the State Police, Colonel Patrick Callahan, wrote a letter from the State Department of Emergency Management to the Department of Education and all public schools, reminding us yet again that in-person ceremonies, such as graduations that invite people to gather at specific locations, violate the conditions of Executive Order 107. So here we are. Are we all sad? Of course. Do we wish things were different? Absolutely. I shared the details of the guidance we received over the course of the last week and a half to make clear that this is not something within the district's control. The communications Dr. Nigel and I have sent out over the last week broke our hearts, but we are legally bound to respect and abide by the guidance we were provided. Yet despite a virtual graduation experience, here's what won't be any different. We'll work to honor our seniors so they know how proud we are. We'll work to infuse some sense of celebration, and we'll produce an event that is true to the spirit of our community. As I've said before, thank you for all your strength and commitment to the students of SHSD. Thank you to those who have sent me such supportive messages over the past few weeks. We hope that your families are safe and well. We'll continue to hope that you have enough to eat, that your livelihood is secure, and that your children are learning. We further hope that the 135 people within the towns of Bernardsville, Far Hills, Peapack, Gladstone, and Bedminster with confirmed cases of COVID have recovered or are recovering. We send our sympathies to the families of the 6 who have died, as we do to the 9,310 families who are grieving in the state, and the 81,779 families who are grieving in the country, and the 289,867 families who are grieving around the world. Stay safe and stay strong. That completes the report of the superintendent.
Thank you, Dr. Dempsey. Public questions and comments. We very much welcome input from the public. Public comments are welcome at this time on any agenda item. Towards the end of the meeting, there's a second public forum on any topic. Please state your name and address. Comments are limited to 3 minutes, but an individual may speak a second time after all others who wish to speak on the topic have been heard. Please understand that our public forums are not structured as question and answer sessions, but are offered as opportunities to share your thoughts with the board. In instances where the board feels there is a misunderstanding or inaccuracy, the board president or superintendent may address the comment. In accordance with New Jersey statute, the board will not discuss matters regarding specific personnel. Public questions and comments will be limited to 30 minutes. Thank you for your input. Do we have any public comments or questions on agenda items, actionable agenda items at this time? Okay, I don't hear any. If we have none, I would like to say that every year we have a reorg of sorts with organizational action items that need to be approved by the board. So I would like a motion from a board member to move organizational action items 1 through 69. Can I have a motion for that?
So motioned.
Second.
Okay. Heather? Roll call for that?
I was gonna say, is there any discussion before I do the roll call?
Yeah.
So these are action items 1 through 69, correct?
Yes,
Because we have some on the addendum.
yes,
I want to make clear. Okay.
that's correct.
Yes. All right, are we ready for a roll call then?
Ready?
Mr. Baker,
Yes.
Ms. Cooper,
Yes.
Mrs. Frenda,
Yes.
Mr. McDonald,
Yeah.
Ms. Nathans,
Yes.
Mrs. Santoro,
Yes.
Mrs. Tover,
Yes.
Ms. Virtue,
Yes.
Mrs. Rye,
Yes.
Mrs. Lees.
Yes. Okay, then we need a motion to approve the minutes from the April 29th meeting.
I make a motion to approve the minutes.
Thank you, Janice. Second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Kathy.
Any discussion? If not, I'll do a roll call there. Mr. Baker,
Yes.
Ms. Cooper,
Yes.
Mrs. Frenda,
Yes.
Mr. McDonald,
Yes.
Ms. Nathans,
Yes.
Mrs. Santoro,
Yes.
Mrs. Tober,
Yes.
Ms. Virtue,
Yes.
Mrs. Rye,
Yes.
Mrs. Lees.
Yes. Okay, we can move into the committee report on finance. Bob?
Okay, the Finance Committee met last Wednesday, May the 6th, for about an hour and 15 minutes. All members were present, along with Dr. Dempsey, Heather Gogan, and Colleen Butler. We discussed the Mercy Bus contract of renewal, which is on tonight's agenda. Last time we discussed that it was a 1.7% increase from the previous year, and we were waiting on the county to give us the okay to go ahead and approve it. Their paperwork is a little behind, but they told us do not delay it. Go ahead and make the approval if the board wants to. So that's on the agenda tonight. The second item is the county is still negotiating with the Education Services Commission, busing vendors. They aren't making good progress. A lot of vendors are holding fast, wanting to get full payment for their bus services. Hopefully we'll learn more next month. So we're not going to save a lot of money there probably. Next item we talked about, as I mentioned last meeting, was the aid in lieu, which goes to parents who drive their children to non-public schools. We make 2 payments a year. Because schools are closed these last 3 months, we're going to prorate their final payment to be $150 versus $500. And that will go out in June. We just approved Damashio's food service contract, which was on the agenda of one of the 69 items. And we're going to raise the cost of meals at each school by 30 cents. And the management fee goes up on $150 from last year to $15,600. So we're going to break even, it looks like, but our costs have increased because of the rotate drop schedule at the high school. We're going to need more personnel to manage the food service at the high school. If everything goes the way we think it is, which that could change, obviously, with the way we run school next year. We also talked about the impact of finances with the school shutdown. We're saving money in some areas, but in some other areas, we are spending more money, as you can well imagine. I know Gretchen mentioned before that, we're concerned about our finances from the town, whether people pay their property tax on time, people go to foreclosures, there's all kinds of things that could happen these next 2 or 3 years. So we talked about what are some of the ramifications. Obviously, the town and the school could trim staff, cut expenses, things like that. State aid will be up in the air these next few years. So there's a lot of unknowns. We just don't know. Yes, the school could go into debt. The town could go into debt to get the money. But right now, that's all up in the air. The only thing we know is the CARES Act, as was mentioned by Dr. Dempsey before. We're going to apply for that money, which is linked to the Title I, what we get for Title I, which is about approximately $50,000. So the $50,000 we think we will get could offset some of the money we're spending on all the school shutdown expenses that are not normal. We are also going to apply for the FEMA disaster aid. Now FEMA normally gives money out for disasters like hurricanes, floods, and tornadoes and earthquakes. Every school in the United States can apply for this aid. So the amount of money we may get from from FEMA could be a very small number, but we're still going to apply for it. We just don't know what we're going to get. We also talked about moving our next finance meeting to June the 3rd. It was originally scheduled for June the 9th. The next board meeting is on June the 10th. So we agreed that June the 3rd would be appropriate. It's a week in advance. So I would like to move action items 1 through 7 on the agenda. Do I have a second?
Second,
Second.
Janet.
Okay. Any discussion on what I discussed or any of the agenda items?
Bob, Mascios will be in the event that we can't move to the rotate and drop or that a common lunch can't be had given circumstances. Mascios is flexible in terms of how they're going to be billing and what finances are, or is that not even on the table for discussion? How does that shake out?
Well, we only pay for what the time and materials. So the cost of the lunches covers their employees and the cost of food. If we serve less food or need less employees, we're not going to pay for it. They only make their profit of the $15,600. That's their money they get for their profit. And the 30 cents per lunch will keep us breaking even. In the past few years, we've made about $20,000 to $30,000. The school's made that, but next year we don't think we're going to make anything. Now, if this whole environment changes by September, then we may have to make some adjustments, but I don't think this contract holds us to any areas that we would be like in a bad spot. I don't see that. I could ask Heather that. I mean, she obviously.
Yeah, we shouldn't have problems with that. I mean, it is flexible in terms of how many employees we have. As Bob said, it really has to do with who the employees are and what the food costs are. Their profit is going to be that $15,600.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments? Questions?
Well, let's do a roll call then, please.
Yep. Mr. Baker,
Yes.
Ms. Cooper,
Yes.
Mrs. Brenda,
Yes.
Mr. McDonald,
Yes.
Ms. Nathans,
Yes.
Mrs. Santoro,
Yes.
Mrs. Tober,
Yes.
Ms. Virtue,
Yes.
Mrs. Rai,
Yes.
Mrs. Lees.
Yes. Okay, Bob, you can move on to facilities.
Facilities and operations met after finance on May the 6th for 45 minutes. All people were present. We discussed the Mercy bus contract, which is on the agenda. We're going to vote on in just a minute. For us, it's going to be $632,784. And that's a 1.7% increase from the current year. We also discussed the use of our facilities over the summer for the YMCA and the Burnsville Recreation. We still don't know what the governor is going to say about July and August. So we're going to tell them we don't know, and more will come next month. We also talked about a law. It's called Alyssa's Law, which requires a silent alarm to go to all authorities and people in the event of an emergency. And we have to install those silent alarms in all our buildings by middle of August. We've gotten quotes to do that. It's about $50,000. The state will fund that through a grant of $114,000. So we're going to be able to use, it's the extra money from the $50,000 to the $114,000 to do other security upgrades. So this silent alarm will go to all authorities and all administrators who need to know instantaneously if something happens. So we should hear more about the progress on that next month. We're not voting on that tonight for a contract, but we have to get this done in these next couple of months. We also discussed the possibility of whether we could open up the track for running and walking. And the police chief and the Board of Health say it's too risky at the moment. It will depend on the governor, what he says over these next few weeks about what we can open and not open. A lot of people would like to get back to exercising on that piece of property. And I know it's very tempting, but we can't do it at the moment. So we will talk about it next month, hopefully. We also talked we talked about the computers for students that are home. We're trying to think about what's going to happen in the fall. So Dr. Dempsey and the tech department's been working on the cost. We would need cases for all the computers, battery chargers, cost of insurance for children to have their own dedicated device all day long, whether they're at school or at home. More will come on that next month. That's a thing in process. We also talked about what Dr. Dempsey talked about in open remarks is graduation and celebrating student achievements. She verbalized it very well. I won't go over it again, but this morning, Mr. Callahan walked back his comments. So I don't think we know what we're going to do for graduation, is my own personal opinion, knowing people keep changing their minds and the governor could change his mind and the Department of Ed could change their mind. Obviously, he said in the paper this morning, his comments were not taken correctly out of context, or maybe he didn't write them correctly. So he changed. He says you can do parades in town. But
the wave parade aspect, he has definitely gone back and forth on, and the chief and I are following that. But I don't know, Bob, just so the public is aware. The graduation aspect, I think, is, I haven't heard the same sense of options at this point. I think people realize that you can't have a graduation without a certain degree of planning, and that virtual is the only option available to us to plan right now.
Right now.
Yeah.
No, I agree with that. But every day people keep changing their minds around here. So I'm just saying that, I thought that was strange, but we'll see what happens. Because even though it seems like it's close, people can cope pretty fast around here, I've noticed. And the last item I have is on the addendum. There's a change order for the middle school generator. We all remember, I think last fall, the generator ran at the middle school and nobody knew it was operating. And so to get the proper switchgear and the annunciator panels to everybody should know that the generator is running, it's going to cost $34,000 to make those changes, which we had already, which we had reserved in the cost of the generator anyway. And just to let you know, the Bedwell generator has that technology already in the price. So that's where that is. So I'd like to move action items 1 through 2. The item 2 is on the addendum. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any questions? Okay, we'll do a roll call, Heather.
Mr. Baker,
Yes.
Ms. Cooper,
Yes.
Mrs. Brenda,
Yes.
Mr. McDonald,
Yes.
Ms. Nathans,
Yes.
Mrs. Santoro,
Yes.
Mrs. Tober,
Yes.
Ms. Virtue,
Yes.
Mrs. Rye,
Yeah.
Mrs. Lees.
Yes. Okay, we can move on to curriculum. Janice, the committee report?
Okay, so the curriculum committee met on May 5th of this year for 2 hours. All people were present. The committee reviewed the BHS electives with less than 10 requests and overloads. After the committee had a discussion, we are recommending that the acting troupe be co-seated with Theater Arts 1 and Theater Arts 2. We are also recommending acting troupe be offered as a semester course rather than a full-year course due to very low enrollment. In regards to architectural drafting, we are recommending not to run this course again due to low enrollment. In addition, there was a discussion regarding the potential benefits of an historical analysis of participation/enrollment in courses with low enrollment to assist in planning. Next, the committee reviewed the summary of the K-5 new math survey results. There was a clear consensus among teachers who reviewed the proposed math programs that we adopt the Ready Classroom Mathematics program. Such items as content alignment to New Jersey State learning standards, program rigor, and overall quality of materials were evaluated. Teachers thought this program would best support our students' learning of mathematics. Therefore, the committee is recommending moving forward with the Ready Classroom Mathematics program beginning in year 2020-21. Okay, so let's see now. We also had discussions on the following items. Gretchen presented the results. Gretchen Dempsey, our superintendent, presented the results of her analysis of the gifted and talented programs from grades K through 8. As expected, the greatest need for additional attention or services was in grade 5, given the limited options available. There are adequate courses offered to identified G&T students in 3rd and 4th grades and in honors courses offered in grades 6 through 8. The group did have concerns regarding whether the honors program at BMS met the diverse needs of kids identified as G&T. We also acknowledge that G&T could include students with talents outside of the traditional academic categories, such as creative arts, for example. After analyzing the K through 12 gifted and talented program, the conclusion is that more needs to be done with the 5th grade and G&T program. We talked about a need for progression from 3rd, 4th to 5th grade. The team also discussed the new professional development offerings now provided to teachers. 3 of the 7 courses now focus on the use of technology in the classroom, which may be particularly useful in the context of distant learning. A basic Spanish course was also a very popular option among teachers and staff. I also noted PDI classes, Professional Development Institute. For now, we'll pivot to virtual classes and teachers will be able to choose from a number of course offerings. After that, the group considered the potential implications of reopening from a curricular standpoint, recognizing that instruction may not be, quote, back to normal immediately in the fall. The group discussed logistical and operational issues surrounding reopening, as well as the additional curricular and emotional support that returning students may require. This is an ongoing conversation and obviously will be subject to guidelines set by the governor. Let's see. I also wrote here, thoughts about reopening from a curricular lens. At this juncture, we are not sure what school will look like in the fall. We may have questions. Will we begin with a percentage of students and gradually increase? Will there be a need to address mental health issues? How much review will be necessary, etc. Okay, so the group, also we talked about the codes of conducts, and the group appreciated the building principal's presentation on the codes of conduct and recognized the progressive nature of codes from BES through BMS and BHS. The group felt that all their questions regarding codes of conduct had been identified. And then additionally, we were satisfied with how consequences for students are meant to be learning experiences in order to improve behavior. We also mentioned we may want to look at high school point system for phone usage. So I would like to move item 1 on the agenda. And are there any questions or discussion?
I'll second.
Janice, we have, oh yeah, you're right. Sorry, disregard.
Okay.
Ready for roll call?
Math program.
Oh, can I just ask a question with regards to the math curriculum? So Gretchen, can you just talk to a little bit about the transition for the kids already started on our existing curriculum, what that will look like for them transitioning over to the new program?
Heather, I don't know that I can speak to it in great detail at this moment. Certainly, we are aware of that. You know, Olga has done work with grades 2 through 5 this year to sort of look at the standards and look at the current curriculum to see where we have alignment, where we have lessons that perhaps do not align and should be skipped over or modified, and where we need to find additional resources for things that are not addressed the way we want them to be. That work has not necessarily taken place in the primary grades to that extent. So how we move from what we are currently doing to this new program, the details of that plan, we haven't ironed out yet. From a practical standpoint, I felt that for us to spend a lot of money on consumables for a program that we did not think was meeting our students' needs did not make sense. And it was interesting when the results of this survey came in, and I thank all the teachers for their honesty and their willingness to spend some time looking through things and getting, providing information to us. But it was a very clear mandate that this was the program that they felt they could best adopt to not only meet their students' needs, but that would be the most usable to them. So, once we commit, Olga will be charged with devising all of, what has to happen now piece of that
transition plan. Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Okay.
Sure thing.
And
There'll be professional development available for the teachers in terms
Absolutely.
of
Absolutely. Yes. And, we have, Janice talked about our PDI Institute. Often we will use that as well to provide opportunities for teachers to engage with some of these materials during the summer so that they can become more familiar with things before September rolls around. So definitely that is part of the work that has to be done. I just don't have the details of that, laid out at this point. We've been busy with other things.
yeah, and that was the point I wanted to bring up. So that's clarified.
I, for one, am looking forward to having a program that's more aligned with the standards so that come testing time, hopefully the students will be more adequately prepared, although we won't have any testing this year to compare to because there's no testing this year. Any other comments? Okay, Heather?
Mr. Baker,
Yes.
Ms. Cooper,
Yes.
Mrs. Brenda,
Yes.
Mr. McDonald,
Yes.
Ms. Nathans,
Yes.
Mrs. Santoro,
Yes.
Mrs. Tober,
Yes.
Ms. Virtue,
Yes.
Mrs. Rye,
Yes.
and Mrs. Lees.
Yes. Okay, Heather, would you like to give the personnel?
Okay, sure. So Personnel and Policy met on May 5th and all committee members were in attendance, as well as Dr. Dempsey and Mrs. Butler. I'll just touch on personnel first. The administrators in each building are working on filling their open positions. And as a committee, we received an update from Dr. Dempsey on the administrative openings. I would like to move items 1 and 2 on the personnel agenda.
I'll second.
There's an item 3 on the addendum.
I'm sorry, Jamie?
There's an item 3 on the addendum.
Okay, sorry, thank
3
you.
and 4, actually.
And 4, yeah.
Got it. Thank you. And items 3 and 4 on the addendum.
Second.
Any discussion?
Any discussion?
All right, roll call. Mr. Baker,
Yes.
Ms. Cooper,
Yes.
Mrs. Brenda,
Yes.
Mr. McDonald,
Yes.
Ms. Nathans,
Yes.
Mrs. Santoro,
Yes.
Mrs. Tober,
Yes.
Ms. Virtue,
Yes.
Mrs. Rye,
Yes.
Mrs. Lees.
Yes. Okay, we can move into policy.
Okay, so in policy, the committee spent time discussing the newly released policies regarding postnatal accommodations. These policies are not currently mandated. Colleen Butler provided us with information on how our district handles these types of accommodations. We learned about what the district provides to employees and how it has been addressed as part of our equity plan. The committee is comfortable with the district's postnatal accommodations and will continue to monitor this over time to see if this is a policy we would like to adopt in the future. The next topic we discussed is policy and regulations 7510. And the committee is moving forward with the recommendation to remove the turf use fee for Group B organizations at this time. As stated in the policy, we will continue to charge the lights and custodial fees when a custodian is not on duty for district purposes. The custodial fees will be charged on a pass-through basis to the organizations. We do need to ensure that the policy language regarding custodial fees aligns to our current contract. So we will review this, and if required, we will bring forth any changes to the policy. So Regulation 75, Policy and Regulation 7510 will be in first reading this evening. And I just wanted to take a moment to review how we pass policy real briefly. The policy committee reviews any policies that are sent to us via Strauss Esme alerts or that are referred by board members, administration, staff, or the public. We discuss these policies in committee and then provide our recommendations to the full board. They are put into first reading on the agenda at the public meeting, at which time the board and the public have an opportunity to discuss the policies. If based on discussion, they require further considerations, they are then referred back to committee. If no changes are deemed necessary, they move to second reading at the next public meeting. At that point, they are on the agenda again, and there is an opportunity for discussion both by the board and the public. If they are not removed or changed once they are in second reading, they are voted on for adoption. And policies need a simple majority vote to be passed by the board. So to that note, in this evening, we have 6 policies and regulations in first reading that we also reviewed and discuss in policy. And they were policies and regulations that came from a Strauss Esme alert. So we have those in first reading, and we have the second reading of the 6 policies that we discussed last month from the Strauss Esme alert. So I would like to move policy agenda items 1 and 2 at this point.
Second, Janice.
Okay, any discussion?
Seeing none.
Okay, roll call?
Yep. Mr. Baker,
Yes.
Ms. Cooper,
Yes.
Mrs. Brenda,
Yes.
Mr. McDonald,
Yes.
Ms. Nathans,
Yes.
Mrs. Santoro,
Yes.
Mrs. Tober,
Yes.
Ms. Virtue,
Yes.
Mrs. Rice, Mrs. Rye,
Yeah.
and Mrs. Lees.
Yes. Okay, Kathy, community relations.
Great. Thanks, Jamie. So the Community Relations Committee met on May 7th for about an hour and a half with all members in attendance, as well as our 2 administrators, Dr. Dempsey and Mrs. Butler. We were joined by our New Jersey School Board's liaison, Gwen Thornton, at our request to discuss the topic of board communications with the public. We were specifically interested in hearing Ms. Thornton's thoughts on best practices as she has seen and heard on this topic. During our meeting, she freely shared her wealth of experience as well as her ideas with us. Additionally, she helped us work through ideas that were suggested by members of our committee. After about an hour and a half of brainstorming, we arrived at 2 action items going forward. The first one is that our administrators agreed that they would discuss among themselves the suggested ideas around additional communication outreach with the public and bring back to our next meeting their thoughts in terms of what might be realistically achieved in the current environment going forward. The second action item surrounded the BOE committee members' agreement that we would try and move forward with an idea around drafting a BOE brochure or handout type communication piece entitled The Role of the BOE, which would hopefully provide a detailed overview to the public on the remit of the BOE and how the BOE functions. And this committee will bring the first draft of that document back into the committee meeting next month. So at this time, our committee has no action items to move at this time, but does anyone have any questions? All right, thank you.
Okay. Now time for supplementary matters.
Yeah, Jamie, I would just like to say something. I would just like to take a moment to thank our administration, staff, and students. And, I know that it's been said, but I think it definitely bears repeating to tell them what an excellent job they're all doing. And I would like to express my sincere and deep appreciation for our school district and all it has done during these unprecedented times. Our administrators continue to create structure and provide leadership in an environment that seems to change on a daily, sometimes hourly basis, as we've already discussed this evening. And our teachers who have had to adapt on the fly have demonstrated to us again and again their commitment to our students, their students' families, and have proven that they strive to be the absolute best they can, no matter what the environment is. And to our students, saying this has not been easy is an understatement. And keeping up with your education while navigating uncharted emotional territories, all while trying to just be a kid, is something that none of us ever thought that they would have to do. But they are doing it with style and grace, oftentimes teaching us lessons. The perseverance of all of everybody involved has been nothing short of incredible, and I am so thankful to be part of this district as both a board member and a parent. So kudos to everybody, and I really can't say enough how thankful I am.
You're here.
You're here.
I agree. I mean, especially everybody's losing something or giving up something or has had some sense of loss of normality and normal routine. And we're grown-ups, and for kids, this is highly disruptive. And I think, I give credit to the students who reached out for Teacher Appreciation Week and have done things for community service to help food pantries and whatnot. Kids are amazing.
Yeah, so thank you, Heather. I believe you expressed the sentiment of all of us on the board.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just wanted to ask one question in addition to echoing everything that Heather said. We have a policy in first reading regarding school closings. And although it may not be a particular policy issue, because I saw that the language definitely covers a multitude of communications and ways of handling those closings. But I was just curious, I know it's been brought up in the past, but also in these circumstances, looking towards Bedwell's policy of relying so heavily on volunteers for a phone chain in the event of a closing, and especially with the with demographics and increased need for translators for non-English speaking students. I just wanted to kind of highlight that maybe that might be something to circle back to and review again and see if that's the best way to handle it, or if there's a way to supplement or enhance that communication, especially for the translators tend to have a very big burden compared to the homeroom parents who maybe have 3 or 4 students to communicate with. So relying so heavily on volunteers for that, especially given, just circle back to given the instability of the times that we're in and how heavy that may weigh on people given any multitude of, possibilities.
Thank you, Sam. I just, one thing that we did feel good about, but it doesn't really help us in regard to those emergency closures where we have to hear back. We do now have the capability for people to opt into receiving their calls and their texts in Spanish. So at least that means that when we send something out, we do have a mechanism to send that out without putting it through a translation step, which often has a time parameter associated with it. You're waiting to get something back. But certainly that is not to imply that we are where we might be. So thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, Gretchen, I've got a question with respect to reopening in the fall. And I know that you're working on a lot of different plans to try to get ahead of the curve, but I'm just curious as to what degrees of freedom you would anticipate having with respect to how an alternative program might be structured in the fall. It seems like any modifications touch on a range of policy and contractual issues such that it would largely be mandated by the state. So I'm curious.
Yes. Right. I can kind of give you a sense, Tim, of the process that we go through, just the way internally our administrative team typically would meet once a month, and now we meet twice a week. The county superintendents are working through this all on a similar program where twice a week I meet with every superintendent in the county and our executive superintendent, who is a direct line to the governor and the state itself, the DOE. So many of those issues are things that we discuss, they go back to Trenton, we get more guidance, and it's a cycle. You are quite right that often our actions are not our own to take. There are dictates. And what's difficult is we don't always get those in a timely manner in terms of how best it can inform our decision making. And I think part of that, quite frankly, is because in these conversations that we have, issues from the field are then bubbled up to the state. And then the Department of Education says, okay, we've received this feedback. Now, how do we kind of digest it and come back with guidance that is meaningful? So the process works, but it's the time frame by which we're trying to do this. You know, every decision is kind of, you try to take a step forward, and then you hear some new piece of news. I know somebody referenced, you know, it's changing every hour. I think in my last communication home, I said I wrote that letter 3 times, which was absolutely true. I probably wrote it 4 times if I count the drafts. So, it's not an answer, but you're right to say there's guidance that we get, and sometimes what we call guidance is really a rule. It's not we're suggesting, it's we're telling you. And I would envision that will occur, and it gets to, you know, internal to our district. You can talk about things like contracts, but even in terms of policies and attendance policies and how you take attendance and what counts as being in school or out of school, it touches on everything. The superintendents in the county are working on a draft of questions that we have devised with our colleagues across the state that touch on governance, policy, attendance, operational issues, in the hopes that maybe if we bubble that up sooner, we can have some guidance sooner. But it's there's a lot of moving parts. I don't know if that really answered your question, but.
Well, no, I mean, I think it answers. I mean, look, first of all, you're doing a great job, and everyone has done an outstanding job, I think, above and beyond in this. So I commend all the work that you're doing. I just, you know, I just, given the you know, the complex interdependencies that you discuss, it seems very clear that it's, you know, I mean, the best laid plans from the district are irrelevant because it's going to be what the state mandates, because that's the only way you're going to address all these issues.
Right. And we can't wait for the mandate to start thinking about it. So I think that's
I get that part, but you know, it's to a certain extent it's academic because it's going to be what the state mandates at the end of the day. So
we are a public school system. Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm just trying to understand, you know, kind of, you know, what the timing for that might end up being, and then ultimately, you know, I guess it touches on a series of different committees. It's not an individual committee that will have to make decisions on any modifications relative to the fall.
Absolutely.
I would guess it would be every committee. Yep. Any other matters? Okay, if we don't have any more board comments, we can go into public questions on comments on any item, any non-agenda item or an agenda item, anything?
Hi, Jamie.
Hi.
Salma Habibi, 8 Mosley Road, Gladstone. I'm just wondering if the board / administrators have considered options for kids during the summertime in terms of kids that don't have access to a lot of resources. So I currently have a laptop that they're using to communicate with their teachers and learn from, but I was wondering if that is something that maybe you can consider allowing all or to have access to that device. I don't know if that's an option, but you know.
We are definitely looking at everything, Sama. I don't know that we've said, oh yes, it's as specific as access to that device over the summer, but certainly we are looking at some of the extended school day programs that we ran at Bedwell and how we may be able to start them back up. Part of the issue is, as Bob referenced, in having camps open. We don't even know if our buildings will be open for anybody in the summer yet.
Yeah, I just know that, with libraries not open, it's just so hard to, have
Mhm.
access to books. So
Yes.
that's-
Michael did reach out to, you'll recall that we had Kindles that we lent out to certain families, and I believe he was able to have some additional books loaded onto those devices. So you're absolutely right that it is a timely need.
Thanks.
I think everything's on the table to talk about.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Any other comments?
So I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Thanks, Bob. Second?
My favorite motion.
I know.
I'll second.
Okay, Kathy. All right. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.
See you
Thank
next
you.
month. Okay.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.